Hi, good evening. Hello, everyone. My name is Miguel Blanco. I'm the former director of Nur Riyadh and now advisor for Royal Commission for Riyadh City and for Riyadh Art. And I would like to welcome you all on this last panel talk of this third week of programming under the Reflected Identities, Shared Futures. This week has the heading of Feeling Light-Headed, How Can Art Make the World a Better Place? And there's been a lot of different panels over the past couple of days, including panels with Random International, Cecilia Bengolea, and also a lot of the artists that are present here in the exhibition and that were present in the festival back in December. Tonight we are gathering here to discuss the topic of the increasing relevance of cross-disciplinary thinking. Can art and science help each other and make life better? And I think this is a fantastic topic, and science has always been very, very important for us at Nur Riyadh. From the beginning, when we were thinking about the festival or what the festival is going to look like, I think we always wanted to work with artists that they were at the forefront of the trade, no? Artists that actually use science just to push boundaries. And before we go, I would like to ask actually the audience one question. Is like, how many in the audience, how many of you are artists? If you can just raise your hands. Any architects and designers? There you go. Okay, so we have one artist, we have a lot of designers and architects, so I think it's going to be a very interesting conversation. And without further ado, I would like to introduce our very remarkable panel of speakers, starting with Dr. Reem. Dr. Reem Taiba is a Saudi physicist and researcher in experimental particle physics, specializing in the exploration of the small and its connection with the origins of the universe. Dr. Reem has conducted research at the Laboratory for Nuclear and High Energy Physics in Paris, as well as the Max Planck Institute in Munich. She also worked for the European Organization for Nuclear Research, CERN, and currently she's working with McKinsey in Riyadh and focusing on assisting clients in global energy and sustainability industries. We also have Marta Caballé from Italy. She's an architect who specializes in architecture, landscape design, exhibitions, curatorial practice, spatial theory, and architectural history. She holds a degree from the Politecnico di Milano and the ETH Zurich and Technische Universität Berlin, and has worked with some of the most recognized firms in architectural and institutions, including Junia Ishigami Associates, Fondation Cartier, LIN Architects, and Studio Miesen. Since 2020, she is the head of architecture of Therm Art, which we're going to learn more about what Therm Art does, but they actually work in a number of new commissions and cultivate cultural partnerships and projects. And then we have Marek Wolinski, who is a London-based curator and producer, specializing in large-scale projects and cross-sector partnerships. Marek practice centers on the experiences at the intersection between art, nature, technology, and science. He has worked with the United Nations, with the Mayor of London, British Council, Luma Foundation, European Parliament, and currently she's also the curator of Tuwake Sculpture, which is the sister project of Nur Riyadh and the Riyadh Art umbrella, which will have live sculpting until the 8th of February, and then an exhibition from the 12th to the 24th, so you're all invited to come. So with this incredible panel, and I think we are all very lucky today to have such esteemed speakers, I want to start, Reem, with a question first to you. So how can those working in seemingly contrasting fields, such as art and science, how that work how can you bring that work together to enrich our lives? How can art and science collaborate?
Yeah. Hello, everybody. I always think that the art starts where science ends. So it can be a continuity, but it needs accessibility to cover that path. In my work, so for the past, I have studied particle physics for 12 years. And as a fundamental in this science, you need to learn a lot about quantum physics. Where one very special area, I think, that can be very a playground for physicists, and that connects to real nature and science, is quantum physics, because it offers so many insights and opportunities. But the downside of it, that it needs to be accessible. Until now, it's only mathematicians who knows it and physicists who can do math can understand it. And I take this as a personal journey to make quantum physics accessible. And I would like to bring a couple of ideas in that sense that we can use to enrich the human life. Because what I try to do is project the rules and laws that happens in quantum physics into human behavior, and see how does that impact, or what insights does that bring on emotions and on interactions with people and understanding oneself, basically. So just to start, if you want to understand the origin of the universe, you have to go to the quantum realm, which this realm is basically when you go very deep into matter to the scale where it's indivisible. This is the scale where it's the quantum realm, when it's indivisible between amongst each other. And the rules are completely different there. They're different in sense when you compare it to determinism or the classical. There are three ideas that I want to touch upon and then interpret it into the human behavior, or in how artists maybe can take it into the next step. My job is to make it accessible. Artists can take it from there. So three ideas, which is the idea of duality, and the idea of uncertainty, and the idea of superposition. Now, these are very physics jargon or physics terminologies, but let me expand more in them. So starting from duality. Duality happens between energy and matter in physics. Energy and matter at some scale, they're the same thing. Energy and matter and energy. At some scale, it's exactly the same thing, but at all other scales, they're interlinked. They can be translated from one to the other. But you can think of it as it's a coin with two sides, you take and you give. And for me, that applies to the human, because the human is a body, but also it has ideas, it has thought, it has emotions. All these are intangible things, exactly like in physics. There's matter that is tangible, and there is energy that is intangible. And quantum physics exactly describes the relationship and interaction between them. So if you want to project that into body and emotions, quantum physics really says the nature between the body and the emotions. And the first thing is that it's duality. One cannot live without the other, and they both feed each other. It can be translated into each other. So whatever emotion you have is going to appear on your body. Whatever physical body you're experiencing, it will appear on your emotions, right? So this is one idea, is the duality. And this is an idea that is fundamental to nature, and is such I can only project that it's fundamental to the human being as well. The second idea is the uncertainty. The idea of uncertainty is fundamental in nature. We cannot escape from it. And also the uncertainty happens between two objects that are interlinked with each other. So the idea of uncertainty how can I put this in simple words? The idea of uncertainty is that at some point, the image that we're looking at is like a very low resolution. You cannot distinguish, we cannot see it, like a very low resolution. If there's like an animal, you cannot see that it's a cat or a dog. You're uncertain about this image. And this uncertainty, because the difference of scale from where we look to where it is, because it's happened in the quantum realm, it will always be there. It's fundamental to nature. And for scientists or for physicists, it's a big problem, right? Because physics and science is a deterministic science. We need to control the environment to really understand what are the outcomes. If we cannot see it and we cannot control it, we don't really understand how it works. So this uncertainty will always be there, and it's a big problem for physicists. But I think for artists, when you look at it from like the exact extreme opposite, this is so freeing, because there's such a big potential that you can play and make it your playground. Like uncertainty is kind of the facade of the potential of innovation, what I like to think about it. So that's another idea that I think artists like definitely embrace. The uncertainty in things, the uncertainty in energy, or the uncertainty in the low resolution of pictures or image or things. Another point in the uncertainty, because it happens between two interlinked objects. So the idea is, if you know 100% about one object that is interlinked to another, it's impossible for you to know any information about the other object, because they're kind of interlinked. But if you know 50% about one object, this induces 50% of the information on the other object. So you kind of can extract or induce different information, different from the input that you have, which I think is also a very interesting playground, in the sense of, I'd just like to give an example in this, because it also linked to the idea of entanglement. Like if you have the color red and blue, these are two balls, let's say, different, red and a blue ball. And I give you the red ball. You will only have information about the red ball or the red paint. But if I give you only the blue, you will only have information about the blue. Let's imagine their paint is going to be a better example. But if I give you 50% red and 50% blue, and since it's paint, it's going to mix to purple. And purple for you is a completely new information, because you don't know how much blue and red is there. So blue and red, in this sense, are entangled into a new information that you have. So the uncertainty role here is, you're never uncertain of what the combination of the object is, but you already have a new information that you can play with. The third idea that I think quantum mechanics brings to the table is a superposition. Superposition is the physics term of parallel universes. Superposition, this theory that was put forward in the 70s by a physicist called Hugh Everett, is called actually the Everettian theory. It was a solution to a big problem, a problem of discontinuity. So if you want to measure the evolution of any particle, of any quantum particle, as soon as you try to see it, or try to put your hands on it, or try to measure it, what we call, this measurement immediately changes the whole system. So before and after the measurement is not the same in the system, and hence they cannot be comparable. And that's a discontinuous in the timeline of the evolution. And that's a big problem, because that means it's not what it was. So the result is not the same particle. So this Everett, he came and he said, okay, in quantum physics, the potential has infinite possibilities. Instead of this object in this evolution, it changes by measurement, let's assume that all possible potentials have an independent timeline. So whatever change it happens in the future, it already has a past in the timeline. And so we have a continuous timeline without discontinuity. That's kind of why the theory was put forward, to solve this problem. But this now has many interpretations, right? Because you have a potential with infinite possibilities, and based on your measurement, or what I like to say, your choice, you can jump time from one timeline to the other, right? And here, like, this is what I like, my playground of what I like to think here is the creation of reality that you live. There are the infinite possibilities. Which one will you measure and will become your reality? And that's like a whole different game that quantum physics can do it with math, but we also try to do it as human beings, and we try to live it being conscious, having choices, and so on. So, like, these are just examples of some concepts in quantum physics that, when we project it into the human behavior and human being, it can create a different experience for us to understand oneself better, to be more of a conscious being, to have a different perspective, because quantum physics is literally how nature works. I presume that this is also how human nature is. I would just wrap up by saying that I think that this field of quantum physics is not only for physicists and mathematicians who knows the math behind it, but it can be a tool for all other disciplines, like a new map that they can navigate this new science or new discipline with. I think from art to natural science to social sciences to finance and economy. Anything that is quantifiable, you can apply the rules of quantum physics to it, and that's I think in my thought, that's a game changer. That's a revolution for all sciences.
Well, thank you for that. I learned so much, I have to say. That was fascinating, and I like the way you started. I think the art ends where science starts. I think that's really powerful, and I think it also, a lot of the elements where you were just describing maybe also can apply to that. No, that there's certainty end when uncertainty starts. No, so I think that was fascinating. Thank you so much. I think it's a good time for us to ask Marek, who has been working with brain-computer interface lately with artist Alan James Burns, and I think if we can take in what Dr. Reem explained. I mean, can you just tell us more about your work with brain-computer interface, and what is that you're trying to achieve with that? What is the process, and how can science and art mix together to make life better?
Absolutely. Thank you, Miguel, first and foremost, for inviting me to this panel. And it's really a pleasure to be among such esteemed speakers and the audience. It made me think so many different avenues, Dr. Reem. And there is also a project that I curated many years ago, I think it was 12, based on the game theory, the focal point. So the approach that you just described made me think about, the solutions that people tend to choose by default in the moment when there's no communication whatsoever, in order to coordinate same results, so avoid failure, and how that can work in practice with science helping us understand the world around us. And that's basically, I think, leading us to brain-computer interface, one of the images from the exhibition. Before I start telling you more about this one, as a curator, I always think and try to advocate for visitors' experience, because after all, it's all for us visiting the exhibition rather than for the artist creating and producing a piece of art. And when thinking and designing a visitor journey, I always try to aim for first the physical experience, then emotional, and the third, intellectual. So similarly, like the trio that you mentioned, with different elements but closely intertwined and resulting in a very holistic experience. On that note, I was thinking about the theme of our talk today, that this cross-disciplinary approach, whether the word cross-disciplinary is the one invented by us, because we tend to divide the world by disciplines and think that you're a scientist, you're an artist, you're a designer, or whether we should rather think about holistic approach and that we are all in this together, and perhaps the boundaries are blurred because science ends and art starts, because the science hasn't reached that point yet. And speaking of that, we tried to visualize how people think. So the brain-computer interface was used in an exhibition called Augmented Body Altered Mind. You basically walked into a gallery space, and the way you think would be visualized in real time around you through a very small headset device, cordless, working on Bluetooth. When you will see the images, there are different brainwaves on an iPad. Basically, the brain-computer interface detects electricity produced by different brainwaves and then translates that into images reminiscent of different environmental, neurological, biological imagery. At the same time, you as a visitor, you're immersed in a multi-channel audio experience, evocative of different environmental sounds like moving sand, gust of winds, or breaking ice. It was an exhibition that focused on the climate challenge and how different approaches to the most pressing issue nowadays could be externalized through the way of making invisible ways of thinking visible. So again, bringing something to the surface that we take for granted, because we usually describe what we think, not how we think, and every one of us thinks differently. So the whole project that started with the artist Alan James Burns, his residency with the Science Gallery in Dublin, and I acted as curator and producer of that show. A project really, because now it's ongoing for 4 or 5 years. There is the theory of complementary cognition developed by Dr. Helen Taylor from Cambridge University that basically argues that all of our brains were developed differently by evolution, and the fact that someone is dyslexic is not because their brain is like weaker. No, his brain or her brain is developed in a different direction so that we as a community can find solutions to different problems. So if someone is better with numbers and someone is better with language, it doesn't need that they can work on their own. They should work together to find a comprehensive, holistic, if we can go back to like cross-disciplinary, solution for a situation that we are in. So basically the whole exhibition, Augmented Body Altered Mind, acted as this conversation starter of how you and I could work together to find a solution to someone that basically touches everyone's life. And we cannot be there alone, just reading scientific papers that predominantly are inaccessible because they are written using the jargon that it's out of our scope. And how we could join forces and synergize for a better tomorrow.
That was great, thank you. And I like this idea that you mentioned on how it was about how we think, not about what we think. Because I think we all focus always on the what, no? But if we pay more attention on the how, sometimes the answers become more apparent, no? And we can reach a better understanding in some. So I think that's a very interesting way of just developing that research. Thank you, Marek. Marta, thank you for being here. mean, you've been working with, I mean, you have an extensive career, but I think Therm Art has some incredible projects. I mean, the Serpentine Pavilions or many other projects that you've done, very high profile. So can you tell us more about Therm Art, your projects, and how do you link them with sustainability or the mix between science, architecture, design, and art? I think if you can mention some of the projects that you've worked on and you're working right now, I think that would be great.
Yeah, of course. And I would also love to extend my thanks for inviting me to this panel, and also to the speakers from which I've already immensely learned from. And I would like, I would say thermal art is really working interdisciplinary at its very core. And for somebody who has a training in architecture like myself, this has been so fundamental and so inspiring, because if you think about it, architecture is inherently multidisciplinary, right? It's really, I would say, a synthesis incorporating engineering, geometry, science with artistic expression, cultural symbols, and heritage. And I think this puts it in a very complex realm that it's really, really exciting to explore, and that really needs multidisciplinary thinking to be powerful. And that's why I really appreciate these contributions, because I can already kind of echo what both Dr. Reem and Marek have just said. And when you talk about uncertainty, that's, I already mentioned this to you, it's what I call enchantment. And I think that there is a lot of kind of potential in this. But going back to Therma Art was established in 2017, really with this idea of rethinking how the future of our cities could be, what can we learn from different disciplines. And we really understood that to do this in a way that is truthful, that is powerful, that is impactful, you really need to invite everyone to the table. You cannot think in isolation anymore. And that's why, for example, the funding kind of concept behind our commission programs or our partnership is the Wellbeing Culture Forum, which is a platform that we developed in collaboration with leading voices from science, from art, from all creative disciplines, really to really understand how strongly all these disciplines can work together and how much they can serve as a very powerful mediator for one another. I'll just, I would say that well-being is also one of the kind of core themes that we focus on, and well-being is something that of course goes beyond wellness or just beyond a state of a physical state, but it's really something that encompasses very complex layers of course physical, but also mental, societal, and environmental factors. And that's why we really found ourselves working a lot with the media of experiential art. And I think that's also something that I think Marek works a lot with. And that's why experiential art really works as a focal point of our work, and this happens when art goes beyond mere kind of binary relation between the artwork and the viewer, when it goes beyond observation and really enters the realm of space in which let's say the boundaries between art and life are very much dissolved. And so once you put the visitors, the viewer, in this kind of deeply immersive condition, and you engage on many levels and senses, I think this really has a great potential to also shape and inspire cultural behavior and social changes. And I would say also that there is a tendency to associate immersive art with digital and technology, which is of course absolutely true. But I also think that a great potential of experiential art is also its really extensive canvas and kind of heterogeneous nature. And I brought some of the projects that we have been kind of developing and supporting with thermal art, and some of them are actually of a very analogic nature, and I find it actually really interesting that it's kind of brought back to that. And for example, I don't know if we can go to the slides to the Yepahine project.
I think they're flicking through.
We're flicking through, but you will see, you probably saw the picture of the children painting. Yeah, that's a commission that we developed in partnership with Manchester International Festival in 2021 and with the artist Yepahine, and it's part of a series of work that the artist calls Breathe With Me, which is, it's so powerful in its simplicity because you're invited to conduct a breathing exercise and you are basically depicting your breath, your inhalation and exhalation while doing a watercolor lined. And we brought this exercise to local schools in Manchester. We engaged over 1,000 children that were guided through this breathing exercise and then asked to depict how they were feeling. And if you think about it, this is really powerful because it doesn't happen in school a lot that you're actually asked about how do you feel and really go into a deeply experiential introspective moment, which is actually such a fundamental part of learning and of, you know, becoming a healthy individual. And yeah, this is actually a work that it's very accessible, very, very simple, but that works and engage on so many levels. Another work that I'm very, very, very fascinated with and that we have acquired on the occasion of the 2021 Architecture Biennale. I also find it very interesting that it was presented at an architectural biennale, not an art biennale. This kind of speaks to what we are talking about, this kind of deep interconnection between disciplines, is a work titled Resurrecting the Sublime by artist Cecile Tolas. That she developed it with Daisy Ginsberg and a team of engineers and researchers in biotechnology. And the work is titled Resurrecting the Sublime because through engineering they were able to decode the DNA of 3 species of extincted flowers whose specimens were archived in Harvard's University Herbaria, and then with the help, with the collaboration with the artists, Cecile Tolas works a lot with smell, they were able to recreate the smells of these flowers. And you were at Venice Biennale and you would enter this room almost empty, but you could smell this incredible, sublime smell, which is talking about something that we have lost. And it's really fascinating that through progress, through engineering and technology, we were actually able to bring back something that our own development has, in a way, lost. So,
fascinating. Just before we move on, you mentioned well-being. Mm-hmm. Can you give us some examples where you think like cultural projects and art can contribute to an enhanced well-being of the visitor's experience or in general?
Yeah, immensely. That's why I think that experiential art is so powerful, because you really have the chance to have a very direct, intuitive, simple to understand access to with the visitors, with the viewers. And if you think about art, it really has served as a catalyst for transformations and cultural norms, and really fostering progress in a way. And I do think that art is really a fantastic tool to really make us think about what well-being means and experience it in a very direct way.
Thank you very much. Dr. Rim, I want to go back to you with a question. If you can remember any moment where you felt that science has learned something from art and vice versa, I think if you have any example where you can share with us on that topic.
So I think the art in science is engineering. That's like mainly on a very blunt word, because like the natural sciences or the science, they're very structured and methodological. But when you do the cross-disciplinary, even within sciences, that's when innovation really happens, actually. And between science and it can be art or architecture, or comes the engineering of of the discipline. Like when I was working on these detectors or semiconductor machines, we understand the physics of how it works and we try to make it more efficient and so on. But honestly, there was a really brilliant engineer that just like came up with like a building mechanism for the chip, and it changed the game. It didn't need the natural, the physics science. It needed an engineer to really innovate in such a small chip, you know. So I think that's one point or one area where is just the interdiscipline, the multidisciplinary between two sciences is a source of innovation.
Thank you. No, absolutely, and I think we have an engineer with us tonight, at least one. Thank you very much. Marek, we've talked about immersive experiences and obviously the cross-disciplinary and the holistic. So where can we go next with exhibitions and how can exhibitions embrace this collaboration across disciplines and where do you see that these are the next steps for us to work cross-disciplinary to enhance the experience of the visitors?
I think that's a very open-ended question. Definitely it's something that will be created through encounters, let's say. Increasingly more, I think specifically in Saudi, the projects developed here have this beauty of being developed by substantial number of people working on a common goal, coming through from different backgrounds, not only speaking of countries and cultures, but their education and approaches. So more collaborations between scientists, engineers, artists, not thinking really about their background and experiences, but the common goal and the vision that unites everyone. That might be the upcoming, let's say, avenue for the development. And I strongly believe that in general the whole is bigger than the sum of its parts. In that way, an artist, an engineer, and a creative at large could achieve something that it's way, way bigger and unexpected, perhaps. When going back to the beginning of our discussion, speaking of collaborative work, this image comes from a project that got commissioned for COP26, the United Nations Climate Change Conference back in Glasgow. And it started during COVID. So I acted as producer of this project, and we really didn't know what it could entail and how it could develop, because it was the beginning of the pandemic. So we reached out to a number of participants from across the world, from Brazil, the US, Canada, through to across Europe, Lebanon, Egypt, Vietnam, Korea, to contribute short stories from their daily life. And as we were collecting them, different imagery and different videos and voices from all around the world arrived, let's say. Later, once the pandemic regulations kind of eased off, we were able to bring people together to experience those stories, so not only as an online version, but as a fully immersive experience. And then the medium of art allowed this semi-scientific research, because there were climate scientists involved in the project, to travel globally from Glasgow and COP26 through to G20 Indonesia presidency and other places around the world to spark conversations about our daily behavior and how climate change influences our daily rituals and how our daily rituals need to adapt to different situations, which makes me think of many different terms that scientists again use to describe the situation we are now in, well-being related to climate challenge, like plant blindness, for example, which is an interesting term coined by two botanists and biology educators back in, I think, 1999, which basically describes a moment in our lives or like daily behavior when we erase plants from our perception because they seem like they're everywhere. I think it's not relevant to Saudi because, first of all, they are not everywhere, but second, everyone really champions and cherishes palm trees. So plant blindness is definitely not a term that can be applied to the Middle East. But in general, how people can interact with the environment around us, and how art allows through different presentation vehicles to fuel that conversation. I think that's something that is really out there waiting for us. So again, encounters, collaboration, and conversation, I would say, would be the future of togetherness, if you will, Miguel.
I see a very strong component of community, no, and just giving back to the community, involving the community. So I think that's.
And to quickly add, I think turning visitors into participants, because that's something I see here happening in the Nur exhibition, but also even in Twig when we welcome visitors, they really have this hands-on tactile experience. I'm even tempted to say tactile knowledge. So knowledge that is not like based on theory, but on your own holistic, very hands-on approach of understanding the world around you. And again, with this exhibition, the brain-computer interface, there was no show unless you, as a visitor, you were inside, participating actively and creating it in front of yourself and others. So.
Thank you very much. And yes, we have some artworks in the exhibition for those of you who might not have had the opportunity yet, that actually work with synesthesia, where you actually and with tactile audio synesthesia, also with cymatics and with the representation of sound waves. So I think and also Random has also a piece which is interactive and AI generative. So there's a lot of pieces that actually have the visitor as a participant. So and I think in many cases they're some of the favorite ones as well. And Marta, just to link with the climate change, and I think, and with your work with Thermal, do you think is climate change the obvious point where art and science meet, and we can see that year by year for the past 30 years, but every day with a louder voice. I think climate change is something that all of us are incorporating in our projects, or are seeing being incorporated everywhere. Like, how do you see the art and science and where you see the role of climate change and sustainability plays in that?
I wouldn't say it's the most obvious meeting point, but it's definitely the most urgent meeting point. And I think I can completely agree with your words, with your kind of closing words when you were talking about collaboration, dialogue, and exchange. And I think that really the intersection of art, science, and architecture can really make sustainability issues, climate change, and also kind of how to get out of it. So ecosystem restoration, ecology, symbiosis with nature, understandable to a layer that is more accessible, first of all, more poetic, more elevated, less loaded, and less threatening. For example, Timothy Morton talks a lot about the idea of sublime connected to climate change, as in something that it's there, it's very scary, and we don't really understand it. And I think that's really the close collaboration between art and science is such a great way to start really unveiling and communicating what is going on and what it could be a way through it, and hopefully a way out of it. And I would like also to mention, for example, as Marek mentioned, blindness. We work very closely at Therma Art with Professor Stefano Mancuso, who is one of the kind of leading botanists, and that has really worked a lot in the field of plants neuroscience. So it really studies plants and their very intricate system of communication with one another. They're extremely resilient beings. And he presented also at Biennale 2021, the Architecture Biennale, a work that is titled Mutual Aid, and that it's really inspired by the system of mutual aid and communication that we find in ecosystems, in which nothing is a waste, everything becomes a resource, and everything finds its own place in the system. The system doesn't allow basically anything that it's out, doesn't allow waste. Everything is, bring back to the system. It's not a linear idea, but it's a circular idea. And I think that this dialectic that Dr. Rim called duality at the beginning, I think can be, a really interesting way to debate and to talk about these issues.
Thank you very much. I think those were the questions that I had, but I would like to open the questions for the audience and see if anybody has any questions for any of our panelists. Okay, well, thank you very much for a fantastic, a very, very informative panel. And can we just please have a round of applause for our panelists? And I would like to also let you know that on the weekend of the 16th and 17th, we have the final round of talks and programming for the exhibition Refracted Identities, Shared Futures. So please stay tuned, follow us on social media, and please come join us. And thank you very much to the speakers, to you, and I hope you have a very good evening. Thank you.